Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mark Pick from Pick Cloud, and I wanted to welcome you to our webinar Wednesday. This week, Wednesday, we're featuring AccuTerm 7, and I'm honored and pleased to have Mr. Pete Schellenbach from AccuSoft Enterprises on the line today, the author and founder of the AccuTerm product. So we're real pleased to have Pete with us today. And one of the things we want to go over is the top 10 things you maybe didn't know about AccuTerm. A lot of people out there are using a terminal emulator, and maybe they don't know a lot of the things that are built into the product. So let's get started here. Just a couple housekeeping issues here so we stay on track. If you have any questions or anything like that, please use the messaging that's built into the GoToMeeting. If you have any technical questions regarding AccuTerm, I recommend that you use the forum that they have over at AccuSoft. It's right there on the screen. You can see that. I highly recommend that you go there and register. There's a wealth of information there. Talks about AccuTerm tricks and tips and all that kind of good stuff. So real good things there. The other thing is to ask a question. To do this, in fact, here's a question that just popped up right here. Through the GoToMeeting, there's a place to do chat. Just go ahead and ask your question, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation today. So let's get started. So as far as Pick Cloud goes, as you know, I started this company a little over a year ago. And one of the philosophies, like all companies, we have a mission statement, but my philosophy has always been preserving and rejuvenating the pick space or the pick market. One thing that really grinds my gears is when people say they got to throw pick out, and that just really hits home. And my whole thing is, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. Let's take a look at what you're trying to do. We've gone in and saved companies tons of money by just doing simple things like adding AccuTerm, and we've given their application a facelift by using the GUI. And that's what they wanted. That's all they wanted at the end of the day. So, that's our mission statement. That's what we're all about here at Pick Cloud. The other thing, I wanted to share is what we really do. Our flagship product that we do is cloud computing. And not too long ago, when I'm out there working with clients and moving on to new hardware and all that kind of stuff, I realized that a lot of the hardware is such overkill for what they really want to do, and we can start to virtualize that equipment. So we can have one piece of equipment and start to divvy it up and share some of the resources. And I quickly found that, this is such a natural for us to use a multi-value pick environment in there and take advantage of some of the hardware and take advantage of some of the hosting centers that are out there that we can do that. So I researched that for quite some time and found a couple companies that offer a fully managed environment where we can host your pick application. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But that's really what our niche is here at Pick Cloud. Of course, we reduce all the capital expenditure, and now we turn it into an operating expense. And we can, have all the redundancies built in. We can give you the scalability that you need to do. If you need more CPU, we can do that. If you don't need it, we can take it away. If you have peak periods, we can deal with that. And the other thing that we announced not too long ago was database as a service, true database as a service. And what do I mean by that? We've partnered up with OpenQM, where we can come in now and sell you the actual multi-value seat for as little as $15 a month. And we include all the hardware and software that's built into that. And we'll talk about that more at a later date. So let's get started here. Let's talk about the terminal emulator that's been out there. When did it come about? Well, we all started working on a terminal. At least myself and Pete, we started out in the early days when terminals pretty much looked like this. This is an old school ads terminal probably back in the microdata days. And all the applications were green screen applications running just perfectly on this big old beast of a terminal, is what I used to call it. And then all of a sudden in the early 90s, approximately 90, 91, 90, 91, Windows came out with 3.0. And so the big question was, hey, I have this PC here. How can I connect it to my PIC machine? Well, here we go. Here's the introduction of terminal emulation. And of course, Pete shortly thereafter came out with a product called AccuTerm. And this gave us the ability to connect from our PCs running Windows to our MultiValue systems. And there was a few of them that were out there, and we all connected up through our good old serial cable. Now, obviously, we're using Ethernet, and now some of us are even using wireless. So it's come a long way. So let's just to get a feel for the audience that we have out there. What is your current terminal emulator? I'm going to launch the poll here so you guys all see that. You should see that by now. And I'm just curious to know what type of terminal emulator are you using. When I'm out there, I see a lot of people just using the standard stuff that's built into Windows or Macs. They're using PuTTY, CRT, Reflection, or maybe you're using some of the other PIC products that work well. The Wintegrate, which is a fine product, along with Viaduct, or maybe even Anzio. So go ahead. I see we got a lot of response to that. So let's gather those results. I'll give you a couple more seconds on that. All right, let's show the results of the poll. Okay, good. There we go. Well, this is good for Pete. We got a lot of over almost 85% of our audience is using AccuTerm. So I think they're here to learn more about what they can do with AccuTerm. And then, of course, a couple of our favorites that are up there, Wintegrate and Viaduct. And some of the others, probably the others are the ones that are built into some of the PCs that are out there. So this is a good feel for our audience here. It's good to see that a lot of you are using the product. So hopefully you're going to learn a lot more about it. Now, AccuTerm comes in several different flavors. Of course, the flagship product, here it is, the AccuTerm 7. This is the favorite one that's out there that gives you the full emulation. Of course, all of them have the full emulation, but this gives you a lot of the GUI tools that are built in, along with some of the VBA scripting language that's there. And then the AccuTerm Lite. This is a good one too if you have some users out there that don't need a lot of that built in. Maybe they're just doing the heads down data entry. They don't want to be bothered with some of the other features. You can get away with a light version. It has all of the emulation built into that. So this is a good product too. And then the Internet Edition. And Pete's going to show us a little bit more about how we can web enable our PIC application through a web browser using the Internet Edition. And like all products, there is a personal edition, which is a good one. If you want to use this, that's what it's for personal. This isn't for commercial use, so don't think you can get this for nothing and run your company on it. If you have something that you want to do for just yourself, personal, Pete has made this available, so this is a good thing to have. So as far as AccuTerm 7 and what's in it, I like to call it the Swiss Army knife. When I'm out there and I see people with using a terminal emulator, maybe the one that's built in, they've always asked, well, how can I take this? How can I make my screen look better? Or how can I move my data from my PC into or how can I take data out of my PIC machine and put it into a PC? Maybe I'm doing some things with spreadsheets or something like that, and we can, Pete's got a lot of that stuff built into the product to be able to do that. So we can communicate with our host and populate a spreadsheet. The built-in editor that he has, that's a real big favorite of a lot of the developers out there, and of course the GUI development tool that's in there. So let's find out what I want to ask one more poll question, then I'm going to turn it over to Pete. So let me let me ask a poll question here. So let's get that poll question started. And this question here is, I want to know what feature is the most important to you in a terminal emulator. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that, and you guys take your time and answer that. We have, some of the things that are out there, the ability to do pick-to-pick data transfer, or maybe I want to design my own GUI. Or this comes up a lot, is the security feature. I want to be able to use SSH or now even SSL. And of course, emulation, if I need to have emulation. I need to be able to emulate my application, and it has to be correct. A lot of times when we're doing reverse video or underline or just formatting a screen can be a problem. So let's give you a couple more seconds here to do that. So, all right, let's look at the results here and see what you guys are looking for. All right, security. Well, that's good. That's interesting. That's good to know, because that is something that comes up all the time when we're moving clients into the cloud. Is security is one of the top things, because they automatically think that, oh, now that I'm in the cloud, I've exposed my data to the rest of the world, and now I'm subject to, someone accessing my data. So with a lot of the new features that are built into AccuTerm, we can give you that secure connection and feel good about that. And then pick to pick. Okay, so you want to move data from one pick machine to another. By doing that, obviously we connect up to one pick server and then open up another session, and we connect to our second pick machine, and now I can move data back and forth. So okay, well, that's good to know. All right, so what I'd like to do now is, this is while we're all here, let me turn it over to Mr. Schellenbach, and he will take us through the real live demonstration of at least 10 features of AccuTerm. So I'll let him get started with that. Here you go, Pete.
Okay. Can you see me?
We can see you just fine.
Okay. Well, after that poll, thank you for the intro, Mark, and
you're welcome.
After that poll, it looks like the GUI stuff is probably the feature most people want to look at, and that I put as the first topic in the 10 things you didn't know about AccuTerm. And I'm going to try to remember something that you didn't know at each one of these points. Hopefully I won't forget that. Anyway, I know most people know about AccuTerm's GUI, but it seems to be one of the most underutilized features out there. Not sure why. Maybe people just think it's so different and difficult. I'm going to do a really quick demo of building a little GUI program, so that kind of help you get the feel for it's not so bad, and then show you a little bit more complex program. So let's just get started. AccuTerm's GUI has basically 4 components. We have a library of basic subroutines that you can call from your application. A transport layer, which is AccuTerm itself, sends the information between the Windows machine and the host machine. A runtime engine, which comes with AccuTerm, and that is what actually is the GUI on the Windows client machine, and a designer and code generator to help you build your application. So let's open up the designer and build a little application, which I'm going to call demo. It doesn't exist yet, so we're going to create it. I'm just going to leave it a standard application. There are other options if you need to get fancy. On this application, I put a form. Give a caption to the form. And on the form, I'm going to put a title. And let's center the title and give it a little bigger font than normal. And maybe make it bold. We can kind of drag it around, put it where we want it, make it look. Okay, I'm going to put on just 2 data fields on this screen. So put a label for the first one called customer's ID, which should be pretty familiar with for all you multi-value programmers out there. And we'll put a text box to enter the ID. And I'm going to give that a name so I can reference it easily in my code by the name TXID. The TX is just a convenient prefix for when I'm working in code to know that it's a text box and not something else. And let's put a label for the name and a text box for the name. I'll give it a name too. Now at this point we have a basic form layout. Well, let's put a couple of buttons on here. Let's put a cancel button so that if the user doesn't want to update, and we'll call it cancel. And let's put a save button. Okay, so we have our little form now, and it doesn't do anything, but it looks good. There's a little preview tool. We can see what it's going to look like in real life. We can click buttons and do things. Nothing really happens, but it just kind of shows us what it's going to be. Now, let's make some code to go behind us and actually make it do something. I'm going to click on my handy-dandy code design tool, and it says we don't have code yet. What do we want to do? We can pick a few options. I'm just going to use the default. And here is a basic program written just to show our little GUI form that has all the glue that we need to make this work, which I shall save at this point. I'll call the code GUI demo, compile it. I'll come back here and I'll save our project and close the designer. And at this point we have a program that'll run. It won't do anything, but it will run. We can click on fields, we can click on buttons. It doesn't actually do anything except close itself. So now let's make it do something. Back to our form. What we want to do with this little simple program is take a ID for a file and read a record and show the record and allow us to change it and update the file. So first thing we need to do is let's go into our code and open our file. And I have a handy-dandy cheat sheet running on another screen here where I can copy and paste to make this go a little faster. So now we got a file to read our data from. How do we get our data read in? Well, we need to trigger it from some event. Let's trigger it from an event called validate on the customer ID field. And validate will fire if the user changes data and then moves away from the field. So if I right-click there, pick Edit Code, say I want to edit the validate event. I need to rebuild our little program to handle that. Here it is. There's our stub for what do we do when the user changes this data. Well, what are we going to do here? We're going to do read a record. So let's bring some code over here and paste it in. We'll get the ID from one of the arguments that comes as part of this event, read a record from that ID, get the name from the record, call one of the GUI routines from that library which we talked about to set the value of the name field, here's the value of the name, to the variable we called name. If the record's not on file, we call a message box and then reactivate the ID field so they can now enter a new ID. That should work. Finally, we need to handle events for the cancel button and for the save button. Now let's do the cancel first. So basically, we're going to tell the GUI runtime, reset the form, make it the way it looked when it first brought up, and then activate the ID field. For the Save button, we're going to grab the ID from the GUI form and stick it in a variable called ID. And we're going to grab the name from the GUI form and stick it in a variable called name, write it to the file, and then we're just going to jump over to the cancel code because that'll reset the form and go back to the next ID. At this point, we should actually have a functioning GUI program. So let's save it, recompile it, save this, and well, there's our form. Looks the same as before, but this time it should do something. If I put in a customer and hit tab, it should read a record. If I want to change it, I change the field and click Save. Come back and it saved it. If I don't want to change it, I click Cancel. So anyway, it's a very simple illustration of how the GUI system works. Of course, it supports multiple forms and all kinds of GUI widgets. Let me see if I can bring up something that's a little bit more complicated that, I'm not going to actually design it here, but you can get an idea of something that has a little bit more stuff on it. This one has a multi-line text box and a picture box, and it has a cross-reference in the second form with a list, and it does a lot more stuff. You can see by the code behind it that it is there's a lot more meat behind this one. But it's similar in concept. If we come back to our main form here, on the customer ID field, we have an event called validate, and that validate code is handled right here. And in this case, we're checking a few extra things like, are we validating because we tried to cancel? Well, if we've canceled, we don't want to do anything anyway. Otherwise, grab the ID and follow some normal common logic to read the ID and populate the stuff. Anyway, follow that if we want to. Which reads a record or goes to a search form. And so this is a bit of a little bit more complex form, and you can get extremely complex. I know that there are people out there that have dozens and maybe even hundreds of forms in an application. This one looks like when it's running similar to the last, although at this point I can do things like bring up the cross-reference and okay, so one of the things that you may not know about AccuTerm GUI is that you can adapt template-driven 4GLs, 4-generation language type design tools, to use this the GUI system. And I even have an example of one called MV Tools from Ashwood. It's a standard data entry type screen, but the interesting thing is that the code behind it is driven by this special tab in the GUI Designer that is related to the 4GL processing behind it. This is not part of AccuTerm GUI, but it is a way that you can hook your own custom environment into AccuTerm GUI. So we're using the GUI in AccuTerm to design the application, but then we're letting the 4GL behind it handle all of the database updates and cross-references and next number generators and hyperlinking and all the kind of good stuff that 4GLs are so good at doing. One of the reasons we can do that is that the structure behind this is really just a standard pick item. It has values for the different fields that you would see in the GUI Designer, but it's still just a regular pick item. You can create this with your own code. You can read it from your code. You can modify it. You can adapt the designer to have its own tab to reflect your thing. So anyway, that is one of the the things that most people haven't done, but there are some out there, and it's a very cool feature. Just to see what it looks like in real life, it is. You can see that the 4GL environment added all of these extra things to the form. Okay, so that is GUI. Now, other UI tricks. AccuTerm has some tricks you can use to make a green screen app a little bit more modern. And I'm going to go over some of these tricks. Some of them are actually pretty useful things for a green screen app, and other ones are more smoke and mirrors. So we'll start with the more useful things. There's a library that comes with AccuTerm called the Smart User Interface Library. It's a library of basic programs, just like the GUI library, that do things for a green screen app. They'll let you create a window, and this windowing technology actually will work on a real dumb terminal if it has multiple pages in memory. It lets you do things like create labels, text boxes, multi-line text boxes, list boxes, command buttons, frames. It's except for I believe checkboxes and grids. It's kind of pretty much the same set of tools that you would have in a typical GUI. It handles, when you're using AccuTerm as the front end, it handles things like the mouse, so that you can mouse around. You can click in different fields. Let's see if we can make it happen here. This is well, we need to change our colors. So you can see it looks almost Windows-ish. There's little borders drawn around the fields. There's at the bottom here, there's things that look like buttons that you can click, which you actually can click. If I hit cancel with my mouse, it cancels. I can use my cursor keys to go through the fields. I can go, and I can click in a field to select it. I can click in the field to move the cursor to that point. So it works a lot like a GUI application, but it's entirely a green screen application. So it's a way to make your green screen apps look better and run better. So it does both. And anyway, this is using the SUI library. Just do where you can display and input. And anyway, there's documentation on this, and it is included. This is more functional than what I want to show you next, which is basically the smoke and mirrors. This is your typical legacy data entry type screen shown with AccuTerm's old-fashioned, blue and yellow colors. Not very exciting, very 90s-ish. With a very, very simple trick, just by changing colors, I can make this screen, well, actually, you know what? I have it built in. I can just hit enter. I've just changed the colors here to use Windows colors. You know, the standard gray Windows background color and black Windows, foreground color. I'm going to apply what we call visual styles now, which is a feature of AccuTerm. And by doing that, I'm drawing borders around the fields and making buttons look like buttons. Now, I haven't changed anything in the program. The program is exactly the same. It doesn't do anything different. You can't mouse around, but it looks better. It's smoke and mirrors or lipstick on a pig. Okay, next topic is multimedia. Since AccuTerm is running as a client on a Windows machine with lots of capabilities, over the years people have asked for ways to incorporate some image and sound support into their legacy applications, and it's a feature in AccuTerm, and it's really easy to do. You can display images on the text screen. That's been around for a long time. Something new that you may not have known is that you can actually put a picture as a background on your text screen, and you can change that picture under program control. So, for example, if you have an accounting program and a production program, you can change the background of your screen so that the user has a visual clue as to which program he's working in at the moment. You can also play sounds. The previous versions of AccuTerm supported MIDI and WAV files. AccuTerm 7 supports also MP3 files, which are now much more common. One of the benefits of doing something like this is, say you have you want to use some pictures as, say, icon buttons on a green screen app. You can do that, and you can even create a sound file that does a click, and the user clicks the buttons. Not sure, I know it has been done. So let's see. This is a little demo program to show how to display some images on the screen and also a background image. This is right here. I'm just showing a list of possible file names. Down here, I want to get a directory. I'm asking AccuTerm where its program lives, and I'm building that into my directory where the pictures are going to be found. And then down here is a handy-dandy escape sequence that displays the picture on the screen, basically giving it the name of the picture, the file name, and column and row and size and border style to display the picture at. And we will run this program. You can see our little picture list turned into a little thumbnails going across here, and if I select one of these by clicking on it, which is using AccuTerm's mouse and a text screen, we'll get to that in a minute, we're changing the background picture based on the one that I checked. And we have some properties of these background pictures. If I go into the settings here, you can see this, that you can change the opacity of the background picture to make it darker or lighter, depending on how that works with your environment. And it's another interesting thing is this background picture only affects the part of the screen that is displayed in the normal display colors. Things that are done as highlights, like reverse video and blinking and underline, don't pick up the color background or the background picture. Let's do that and put my standard background here again. Okay, how about sounds? Similar to the previous picture, I have a list of file names here that have sounds. They're sound files. I have one of each, a WAV file, an MP3 file, and a MIDI file. And I'm going to put those on the screen with a little picture of those sounds and pick up a mouse click. When on the click, I'll come down here and play the sound. AccuTerm 7 doesn't care whether you use the M escape sequence or the W. One was for MIDI, the other's for WAV. They both do the same thing now. Windows is smart enough to figure out what kind of sound file it is. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear the sounds or not, but we'll try. So anyway, you can put sounds on. Maybe you need a warning when a user enters a bad customer or something. I don't know. There's, I'm sure, uses for that in your standard, green screen app. One thing that that you may not know is that the pictures and sounds don't have to be on a local drive. They could be on a network share using a UNC path name, or they can even be out on the internet or on a web server somewhere using a URL. So you don't necessarily have to go and put them on every user's computer in order to do sounds and pictures. AccuTerm has two ways to use the mouse in a green screen app. There are one way is using pattern matching, where you define a table of patterns that, when the user clicks on one that it recognizes, causes some action to happen. Using the pattern matching is completely needs no programming at all. It's completely handled on the client. It's all done with scripting on the client side, and the program that's running on the host side needs to have no knowledge of it at all. Makes it a very handy thing to do to add mouse support to legacy apps if they're designed in a way that they can accept it. Anyway, I'll show you some examples. The other way is using actual mouse input, which is a feature you turn on with an escape sequence, and then once you've done that, AccuTerm will send back to your host program the places where users have clicked, and it'll send back, left button, right button, click or double click. And it's up to your program then to understand what a mouse click looks like and where it's at, and decide to take some appropriate action when that happens. So that technique does require programming, and but it does fully mouse enable your application. Nothing odd can happen, and it's not pattern based at that point. Let's look at the pattern based examples now. This particular demo just loaded a little table into the settings in AccuTerm using an escape sequence. Oh, I guess I don't see it here. Called word click. And what this pattern is doing, let's see if I can find it. Word select and copy. What this pattern is doing is it's looking for any set of non-blank characters. This is a regular expression. If anybody of you are Unix programmers, you've probably seen things like this. They're kind of nasty and ugly, but you can usually find a reference to help you build them, and even some tools out there. This particular one is just looking for any sequence of non-blank characters. We figured that's a word, and it's taking that and telling AccuTerm to select the word based on the points the user clicked, and then to take that selection and copy it to the clipboard. So if I come down here and I click on a word, it should have been copied to the clipboard. I can actually come over here and try and paste it, and there's our word. So we selected it and copied it by clicking. Now this particular technique is using no programming on the pick side. It's completely done on the client side, and it's done by using that pattern match. Let's try something a little more useful, maybe. How about recognizing a URL? A lot of times you'll have things in your database already now, which would be things like people's email addresses, or how about a website? We're using a pattern here to recognize what a URL looks like and to open up the standard function in Windows for that URL. So in this case, I clicked on Pick Cloud URL, and it brought up Pick Cloud. If I click on Ashwood, we'll get Ashwood's MV Tools. And we click on one that looks like an email address, it'll bring up the standard mail client and ready to write a message with that email address. So probably something more useful in a regular application. Again, there's no changes in the application. This is all done on the client side. And let's open up what that pattern looks like. That is called URL. That's a little bit more complicated than the last one because we're looking for things that start with www in upper and lowercase, HTTP in upper and lowercase, and words that have an @ sign and a period from them that look like mailing addresses. And in any case, we're finding we're using a script command in AccuTerm called shell, and we're passing it as an argument, the thing that we clicked on. In this case, we're passing also a prefix that says mail to. Again, the regular expressions that are used here are a little weird, but you can find help with those. And once you have them written, they're written, and they just kind of work. One area where this has been used to add mouse support to make using a legacy application a little bit easier is in recognizing things like how to go to an input field. I'm going to run one of our old samples here. Say, for example, this application, I have a prompt for going to field 1, 2, 3. I can build a regular expression that looks for a digit and a close parenthesis and a space, and recognize that as a click, and then send back the digit followed by a carriage return. So I could build a pattern to make this old green screen app work with a mouse. Kind of. You might find the same pattern in a place where it doesn't belong, and it might not do what you want then. But in many cases, it will give your a little more life to your old-fashioned app if you don't want to actually add real mouse support into it. Okay. Let's look at the other mouse. This is using actual mouse input, and the idea here is we turn the mouse on at the beginning of the program. That'll change the cursor when you put the mouse over the screen, so that the user knows the mouse is active. And here we're turning it off before we leave. Within the program, we're calling a little routine called getKey, which is basically a single character input. This particular version's written so it'll work on the, D3 or Universe or whatever. So it's system independent. That's why it's a subroutine. Otherwise, you would use like key in or getKey or whatever your system uses, and looks for a key sequence that begins with character 2 and is followed by a value between 32 and 127, which is your prefix for this key. And then we get we decode that into a button number. The sequence that comes from clicking a mouse looks to the application like it was a function key, and it looks like it's like function key 99, 100, and 101 or something like that. It's kind of a very high function key number, but the idea is if you have logic already in your program that understands what function keys look like, you can adapt that to also handle mouse. The difference is once you've seen the mouse function key come in, you need to do another input. That input will tell you the position that the user clicked. Then you have to decide what that means to do. In our case here, we're just going to print out where the user clicked. But you could do, this means go to that field, this means open that URL, this means close the program. So in this case, in this demo, it's just going to show where I clicked. And it'll show what button. If I right-click, I see a right-click. If I double-click, you'll see the single, then the double. Very simple. Okay, so we've done media and mouse and GUI and smoke and mirrors. Now, file transfer. That's one of the more popular features in AccuTerm, especially being able to do integration with Excel. AccuTerm has a set, when you install AccuTerm's host programs, you get the file transfer features as part of that. And we have had the command line version forever, for a long, long time. That's your FTD, answer the prompts and it does its thing. What you may not be aware of, something we're talking about for what you didn't know, is that we have a subroutine version of those same functions that you can call from your program. Now, in prior versions of AccuTerm, we have recommended that people would execute the FT and FTD commands with data stacked for the answers. The problem with using execute is there's no way to tell if the transfer was successful or not. If you call the subroutine version, you will get a status back that will tell you if it was successful. You can see in the FT export, there's a variable that comes back, and if it comes back with something in it, then you had an error. So we also have a wizard which will walk you through the whole file transfer process. And the wizard will, prompt you step by step. If it's a database, if it's a file, where is it coming from? Can I browse for my files? If it's an Excel file, what columns do I want, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a, hold my hand thing. When it's all done, you can save what you just did as a job to rerun it, open it up again, and change the parameters and try it again. It's very handy for ad hoc type things and non-sophisticated users. For things that you would build into the application, the subroutine flavor is probably better. AccuTerm's file transfer, when you're doing a database type transfer like a table, support the either Excel or a Microsoft Access database or text files, either tab or comma delimited, which are pretty common. The Excel actually creates a real Excel spreadsheet or reads from an Excel spreadsheet and indeed uses Excel to facilitate that. So if you don't have Excel, those things won't work. For example, if you're running like OpenOffice, or you just don't have Excel installed. Let's look at the Excel transfer. I have a really simple one here. This is going to use the FD export program, which we just showed you a second ago. And in this program, we pass it a few options, the place we're going from, and this is a download. Where it's going to, the list of the fields we want to send, and we'll get back a status. We're going to stick it in the D drive. Our file is customer. A fairly simple transfer, and at the end, we'll just open it up. So let's. So it's finished, and there it's opened. You can see it is a regular Excel spreadsheet, and all of our 100 customers are there. One of the questions that was that I was forwarded about this webinar was on how to take a green screen type report and put that into Excel. So our typical file transfer routines will create an Excel spreadsheet, but it requires that the data come from a file, not from just a report. One of the things that you can do to transfer a report into Excel is to capture the report as a Windows file and then just open it in Excel and use Excel's text import wizard to convert it into an Excel worksheet. And usually for doing that, you don't want any pagination, so I'm going to set my terminal really long. There's a simple access type statement to show my customer list. Say I want to import this into my Excel spreadsheet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this report again, but I'm going to capture it into a file. So I'm going to call file report text. I'm going to overwrite what's there, capture the data that's being received, and make it only text. And let's run that report now, and we'll go back to our capture button and say, okay, we're done. At this point, we should have on our D drive a report.txt. And there he is. If we just open it with Notepad, you can see it's just a plain text file that was written to this file. But we can now open this with Excel. I'll tell it to open text files. And that will bring up Excel's text import wizard, which it pretty well has figured out what our file looks like. And just by updating the column widths, we have an Excel spreadsheet of our report data that was done just as a standard report with no special formatting. Now, I have not done this, but I believe this could also be automated. You can automate the import process so that you can run this from a program without operator attendance. And likewise, you should be able to spit out a spool file to your screen and capture it, and then suck it into Excel. So Let's see, anything else in Excel that I need to say? No, I think that's all of the Excel. Okay, so how about email? Everybody wants to send emails now, and you often want to send an email directly out of a legacy application. We have supplied in the past sample programs for sending email using Outlook and CDO and a technique called MAPI. MAPI is pretty much defunct now. There might be still a few programs that support it, but it's not common. I'm not sure about CDO. Outlook is widely used, but both Outlook and CDO are very difficult to use because Microsoft keeps changing them because of security problems. So they become more and more difficult to use from an outside application, as a email service. One thing that we are supplying with AccuTerm 7 now is a sample program that uses SMTP. So you pretty much can use any SMTP server that you have access to send email out. This technique uses an open source mail sender called MailSend, which you can download for free off the internet. And it's a very simple, command line driven, give us the stuff and we'll send you an email out type application. We have a subroutine that wraps that so that you can call it real easily. You pass that subroutine a configuration record, which says things like, who's your mail server? Do you need to use authentication? You're using SSL when you send email. Where's the file at that we're going to try to send this from? This mail send allows you to send email in either text form or HTML format. You can attach files to it, and you can send it to multiple recipients. Very cool little handy program. Let's look at that now. So here's the little front end that we're going to drive it with. Basically, just opens up the sample data. Where in this case, I'm reading an invoice that's formatted in HTML already. Reads a configuration record, which has my Gmail account and other interesting things in it. Asks for an email address and call MailSend to send a file. The MailSend program. Basically unwraps the configuration record and then builds a command line. Remember, I said this was a command line type email program, the MailSend program. Looks for all the particular pieces and builds all the right command line options. Calls one of AccuTerm's file transfer programs called DOS service. There's nothing DOSy about it, but basically it sends a file to Windows, runs a command, and returns a file back from Windows. The file we're returning back here is called result, which is a result of the email process. The file we send down is the message body. So let's give this a try. And since I don't know anybody else's email address out there, I know Mark, right? What is Mark's? No, I don't. Let's just use mine.
You know me, Pete. You can send it to me.
What's your email, Mark? Is it just Mark?
Mark.pick.
Yeah.
At MyPickCloud. You got it.
There we go. Okay, so now because this is a command line process, we do see the little DOS window that pops up while it's actually performing the transfer. Transfer's done, comes back. Mark should be seeing that invoice in a minute. Anyway, this is something that you can easily add to your legacy apps to send email out. Just a very simple process. You do need to have an SMTP server that you're authorized to use. And let's see, what is our config? So you can see what's in there. Basically, I'm just saying send it using Gmail, and this is the Gmail mail send port. I need to use authentication, and I need to use security. This is where it's coming from. This is my name and the username and password that I use to log into Gmail, where these files are stored on my machine while they're being sent and received, and where the mail send program happens to live. So real simple configuration. Works real well. So anyway, that is included with this the AT. Where did it go? Anyway, the subroutine that does the email sending This is it. Is included with the AccuTerm sample programs. So you're free to call it. All you have to do is download the MailSend.exe from the website first. Okay. One of the useful things that you can do with AccuTerm, the older AccuTerms, you could send a command to them and say, run this command in Windows. So you could say, I want to run Notepad, and this is the file. One of the things you can do in AccuTerm 7, instead of just having to give it a command, you can give it a document. You can say, open this document. And it uses the same escape sequence to do that. So you can do things like open a browser window, open a PDF file, open an Excel spreadsheet. It's a very simple escape sequence to use. And we do have a sample. Let's see. So basically, we're asking for a path, and we're going to call a subroutine called open document that we pass the path to. The one here means whether AccuTerm waits after the document opens for it to close before continuing, or whether they both run in parallel. You can see there's the wait. If we're waiting, we use this little trick here to synchronize the two processes, because remember, when we do this, we have two computers running. We have the host machine that says do this, all it does is print, and then we have the Windows side that's actually doing it. What we've got to do now is make the host wait until the Windows side is done. That's what the input statement does. The host machine will wait at the input until it gets a response from AccuTerm. AccuTerm will send its serial number as its response, but it won't do it until it's finished. If we're not waiting, we use a similar escape sequence. You can see that one has this greater than sign, the other is the less than sign. The not wait version just runs the two processes in parallel. Very simple. You don't even need a subroutine to do this. You can just copy the code right into your program, but we do give you a subroutine to play with if you want it. Let's open that Excel spreadsheet we did before. So just give it a document name and it opens. And another use for that, a customer actually gave us. That will open a Google map using a URL. So it's using exactly the same escape sequence. It's just that in this case, you can see it's down here. Same escape sequence, but the URL is formed as a request to show a map. I have to give credit to Joe Newman, who actually sent this program, posted it on our forums, which Mark had mentioned. The forum is a great place for resources because it's very useful. Now, he has stuff in here for both Yahoo and MapQuest. I don't know if those still work, but the Google Maps certainly do work. We're just going to pass it the address at AccuSoft and see what comes up. You can see the URL here. This is what the little Google Maps program built. It's able to parse the address into that, and there is almost a map. You can see I'm actually sitting behind that telephone pole in the window up there. Okay, that's opening documents, and now the web editor. I'm sure that if you haven't used this, you should use this. I'm sure you've seen me using it through this demo all over the place. It is just a great program for integrating with your PIC source code because it understands BASIC, highlights BASIC, does formatting based on the language, and it just makes programming so much easier. What you might not know about the web editor is the AccuTerm 7 version has bookmarking, has forward and backward navigation, it has collapsible code blocks, and a more flexible search and replace. And you can save the keyword list and other pertinent settings in a file on the host so you can share them with other developers that are also working on the same system, so that you have consistent keyword highlighting, consistent compiling command, and tabbing. Very, very cool features. Let's go look at that. I think we've opened this program before. One of the things that's very, very cool about this is you can go and it understands that an include statement has a file name after it. If I double click on the file name, it opens it up. So now I have two records here, and one of them I just got by double clicking on the include. Similarly, if I have a Go sub, if I double click on the target of a Go sub, it goes to that line. It understands calls, Go subs, Go tos, includes. There may be something else that has a smart target on it. Anyway, it makes navigating your code very easy. The forward and backward navigation, I can use those to go back where I was and forward, so that if I have, say, I've gone off to look at a particular subroutine, and I've looked at it, now I want to go back where I was, I can click the back button, and I'm back where I was. So anyway, a very, very cool feature. How about collapsible code blocks? People that have programmed in other IDEs like Visual Studio have had this feature for a long time, and it's a very, very cool feature. Say I'm working in this huge thing with all these case statements. It's very confusing, but I know what's in there is fine. I don't care about it. I just want it to get out of the way. I can click the little minus sign next to it, and the entire case statement folds up into a single line, and now I can see the stuff around it that I'm trying to figure out why it doesn't work. And when I'm done, I can click the plus sign, and it comes back where it was. This is based on the web editor's keyword list, knowing what kinds of keywords have special block significance. And that's what we're going to look at next, is the keywords. What the web editor knows about two kinds of keywords. One we call language keywords, and then other ones are user-defined keywords. Now let's look at the language ones first. Some of these are preset, like if. You can't take it in, you can't take it out. It's there. It's part of the language. That's just the way it is. It's, you know, it knows about its block indents. Actually, and is probably a better one, because the block indenting is the block indenting is handled off the end of the if statement, not the if part of it. So anyway, other statements are just statements, and you can add them in. You can load this up from a file. You can import it and from another place. You can save it and give it to someone else with the import and export. This particular one is one, I believe it's on one of the PIC websites. It's the D3 keyword list, all these little functions that have percent signs in them that someone kindly put together for us. You can have whatever keyword list you want, and next is going to get us to our next level here. Well, let's look at the highlight first. We have user keywords can have a highlight color, and language keywords can have a highlight color. So you can tell one from the other when the syntax is being highlighted. That's why they're divided into two lists. But here is a cool feature that you probably don't know, and that is that you can retrieve the keyword lists from a record on the host machine, along with some other things. So you can share the keyword list with all the programmers working in your team. The other items that are saved on the host are the tab size and the margin size, how to indent the comments, and the command used to compile programs. So you can have keywords that are tailored for the kind of a host machine you're working on that are stored in a common place for all developers, and then you can have coding styles for how the programs are formatted, stored on the server. Then last thing I want to show here is what to do with how the search has been changed. Let's do a search for anywhere I'm using the customer zip code field. But instead of just searching the current program, let's search all of the programs I have open, which will be these two tabs, and let's find everything. Okay, there's my search results. You can see that it found one in the program UIE6. We found 2 occurrences on line 600 and 692, and then in this program, we also found another occurrence. If I double-click the line number, it brings me to that line 33. Or if I do it on this program, it brings me to the 692, and then here brings me to line 600. And then I can use my back buttons to go back where I was. Not only can we load the search results into a dialog that you can then click on to find, you can also bookmark the search results. Let's see if we can do that same search again. All of the documents bookmark all. So you can see this line now has a little bookmark symbol here. You can kind of see it in the margin there. Yeah, this one has one there, and one here. So if I'm scrolling around, I can find the bookmarks. I can also look, I can go to previous and next bookmarks from the menu. And there's a function key to do a shortcut to that also. Okay, what editor? Security. Security was one of the things that was on our what is it, questionnaire that we did, Mark?
Yeah, it was some of the questions that came in earlier on.
Okay, so here let's talk about security. AccuTerm has 2 kinds of secure connections. You probably haven't heard much about the second one, which is SSL and Telnet, that we added in this year to the current release. Well, actually, it was probably late last year we added that in. The other security that we've had for a long time is Secure Shell. And AccuTerm supports both version 1 and version 2, although unless you're using some really old servers, you're probably only going to use version 2. Version 1 has been found not to be all that secure anymore. AccuTerm Secure Shell supports 3 kinds of authentication: public key, password, and interactive. Password and interactive look a lot the same. They present you a password prompt and you type in a thing. The difference is that interactive is driven from the host. It's not just a local ask me the password thing. So the interactive version can do things like say, hey, your password's 6 months old, please change it, where the password version can't. Public key is a very secure way to identify yourself. Basically, you create a key pair, public and private key. On your AccuTerm client side, you keep the private key, and the public key you put in your user profile on the host side. And only when the 2 match are you allowed to get in. And only you have the private key, so you pretty much are guaranteed to be you when you try to log in. One thing that's new in AccuTerm 7 release 7.1b, which is about the latest release, I think this came out probably this year, is that we have a feature to validate the host's identity when you make the connection. So something that most other secure shell clients have done forever, and we finally decided we should do it. Basically, it's the little prompt that pops up and says, you haven't connected to this before. Are you sure you're connecting to the right host? And then it'll remember it, so the next time you connect, you won't get that message. It's just a way to validate that you are connecting to who you think you're connecting to. Also, something new in AccuTerm 7 is FIPS 140 mode. If any of you are connecting to government sites or are a government site, sometimes you have to follow the FIPS 140 regulations. AccuTerm doesn't have a FIPS certification, but when you put it in FIPS 140 mode, it only uses FIPS certified algorithms. And the cryptography is all done by the Microsoft Crypto Library, which is FIPS certified. So we use FIPS certified libraries, and we only use FIPS certified algorithms when you go into that mode. Unless you're working with the government, it probably doesn't matter. Another interesting thing that a user actually asked to see if we could do was to do passwordless logins, which seems like it might be a bit insecure, but when it comes right down to it, it's really not so bad. And I'll explain why and show how it works here. So I have a session set up here that uses secure shell with a public key authentication, and this particular one will log me directly into the Linux server with no password prompt, no username prompt, just goes straight in, and I will be at a Linux prompt. And let's look at the settings for that to see how that's done. One of the things that is different here is that I've appended my username to the host address. So I'm Peter at Charlie instead of just Charlie. And Secure Shell has a way to pass that username as part of its connection setup, and so we can just pass that right along. Now, the reason we didn't get a password prompt is because we're using public key authentication, and our key, you can see here, does not have a password. And you might think that would be very insecure, but probably is not, because, let's go look at that key. Actually, the key is going to be hard to find. Let's not do that. The key file is stored in the user's profile in Windows, and therefore it's restricted to the user's own login in Windows to be able to access the key. So if a user is not logged into Windows, the other users are not going to be able to see his key. And when he is logged into Windows, he's already put in his credentials in Windows to be able to access the key. That's why it's probably an okay way to go in. Okay, last topic. Are we doing okay on time, Mark?
Yeah, we're going over. We have lots of questions that have come in, but we'll go ahead and I've been trying to answer a few of them as they come in, but yeah, the Internet Edition. This is perfect.
Yeah, this is where we're going to end, is at the Internet Edition.
Perfect.
Okay, so here we are. Last feature to show you is AccuTerm's Internet Edition, which is basically a way that you can provide access to your legacy machine over the Internet as a standard user would log in. It's almost like giving the user a disk, say, install AccuTerm, configure it this way, and then connect to this address. But all of those details are stashed away in a file that's on the web server, and the user can't muck with those things. They're just fixed. So let's open one of those up, and you can see what it looks like. I think we have one in here called test that we can open up. And it's a standard HTML file, but inside of that file are the settings AccuTerm needs. Here in this case, it's a telnet connection to a local area network host here. It has the terminal type in there. It has our screen, our colors, any special keyboard things that we need. All set up just like you would do for a normal AccuTerm session. It has a VBA script that can run when you're connecting. You can see the little connect script there. This will run as the connection starts. And there's a disconnect that gets run when the connection ends. And what's interesting about this that's different than a standard AccuTerm connection is we also have some security we have to deal with the browser. Where our connection file is found determines its security level. So if it's out on the Internet somewhere and the user wants to allow it to do things, he may have to put your website into his trusted zone in order to allow you to do things like file transfers or run Windows commands or open documents. On the other hand, if you restrict yourself to very benign things, then he can leave you just out on the Internet zone and it'll run anywhere, which is this flexible version. So you have to decide what features the user is going to need versus how much the user trusts you when you connect via the Internet. And then once you are working with your connection, you can try it out, see what it looks like. This is how it'll look in real life. And what we can do then, let's do one more thing. The connection file is a straight HTML file. When we save this, we actually write some extra pieces in this stuff that says do not remove, but otherwise it's just text that's written to an HTML file. You stick up on a web server somewhere, and you're ready to go. And we should be able to try it. with a real connection here. Okay, so we're connecting to a web server. It's loading up AccuTerm's internet connection. It says it's connected. I think maybe our network's running a little slow here. Okay, well, that would be normally what it would do, but I think we're having some network issues. Try it again. Hold on. Okay, well, the idea is that we would open up a standard terminal session or a GUI program here, and it would just run, but I think we're having some network issues. This is done using a browser plugin, and it runs in IE and in Chrome and in Firefox. And if you still have Safari around, it would run in Safari, but Safari is kind of defunct now for Windows. It is a Windows program. It still needs 32-bit Windows to run. So, okay, that is the end of my stuff. So I'm going to pass this back to Mark here.
All right, Pete. Well, good. I'm going to go ahead and grab this. Just a couple closing slides here. And we got hammered with a lot of questions, which is a good thing. So we'll try to get through these. But just for availability and such not, the AccuTerm 7 is what Pete was showing today, and of course it's available on most Windows platforms. This is probably a good time to ask this one question. Somebody asked early on about AccuTerm and my MacBook, Mac OS, and Pete, you and I talked about that the other day. There's third-party products out there we use, which is, go ahead, Pete, tell me what that one is.
You use Parallels or Fusion, or do you use the CodeWeaver's?
Yeah, CodeWeaver. It was the CodeWeaver third-party product.
Crossover Mac.
Crossover, yeah, that's what I wanted to say, the crossover. So
yeah.
We could run that on a Mac, but yeah, as you can see, the supported environments out there, and then of course the others that came before it, the 2K2 product, and then the 2000. I'm not going to go back any farther than that.
Yeah,
so,
no.
Availability.
There's an entry on our FAQ page about the Mac stuff, so if you miss it, it's all there.
Perfect. And then the availability, and it's so funny looking at this slide. Virtually every PIC server known to man is out there. So if you're running any of these releases, AccuTerm is going to run just fine on any of those releases. So I don't know of any PIC products that we don't have a problem with. So there we go. And then what we like to do is we have a special going on, courtesy of AccuSoft Enterprise and PIC Cloud. We can offer a special. The standard price, as you see for AccuTerm, and we've discounted approximately 25% all the way down the line, even with the small business license, which we're very fond of, which is a terrific price. Now, all of these you can get to them from our website. If you go ahead and enter in the code there, you can get that discount. So that will apply, and that's the website right there to go to, which is mypicloud/PCI-HE7. You can enter there and qualify for these prices, and these will run through the end of the month. So if you're a webinar attendee and you're interested in purchasing AccuTerm for the first time, or if you have an upgrade that you would like to do to get to 7 from a previous version, this is also a great time to take advantage of that. So there you go. So why don't we open it up? Pete, we got hit with a lot of questions. I know we're kind of running low on time here, so I'll try to rush through some of these questions. One of them that came up, more than a couple people were asking this one, and that is around the compatibility with System Builder Plus and Wintegrate. I guess there's a lot of, I want to say, Unidata users out there that are using that. Is there anything that would prohibit AccuTerm 7 running with System Builder?
Not per se, except for that System Builder likes to work with SB Client, and SB Client has its own GUI stuff. So if it's a text-based System Builder, then yeah, no problem, because we do text stuff just fine. But if it's GUI-based stuff, then theirs is proprietary and completely different. The same goes for Wintegrate. If it's text-based, we should work fine. If it's GUI-based, they have a whole different perspective on GUI.
Right, right. Okay, so just standard emulation, we shouldn't have a problem. But if they have anything embedded in there, it's going to be an issue. So, okay. Um, what about there was a lot of questions coming in about performance on some of the file transfer between the PC and the local host. Is there any way to tweak that performance, speed it up? I think it was more around, there was a couple coming in about FT server.
Well, yeah, there is a way to speed up some of that. Depends on the environment it's running in. Specifically, people running on AIX have more issues than most, and there are some tweaks that we can do to that. So it's just better to email me on that. It's kind of hard to explain, but there are some things that can help. The problem with AIX is that they have some bugs in their telnet server that make it really hard to do things fast.
Okay. The other ones that come in are, of course, the mobile devices out there. Everybody seems to be running some sort of mobile device, namely iOS devices. And the question is, can I run AccuTerm on my iPad?
Kinda. You can't actually run AccuTerm on your iPad. You can run a remote desktop on your iPad that connects to a server that runs AccuTerm on the server. We are exploring how to actually run it native on an iPad, and hopefully we'll find something that works well soon. But we are messing with it. I can't say that it's a product or it's going to be done in 6 months. I don't know when it'll be ready, but we're working on it.
Okay, so
in the meantime, remote desktop works for both iPad and Android.
Right. Okay. As far as updates to AccuTerm 7, the latest release, I think you were showing, I don't have the actual number for me, but I have the link to the latest update. So if you are running a version of AccuTerm, I'd encourage you to get on that latest version, and then you can download that, and we'll share that. We'll email everybody on how to get that. So the other thing that has come up, they want to know about the web editor. Is it included with the base product? And I believe it's included with the standard edition.
With the standard, yes.
Okay, so that all what you saw today was inclusive in the standard edition. So you wouldn't find that.
The only thing that's not part of the standard edition is the Internet edition. It's a separate program. Everything else is part of it.
Okay. Boy, so many to choose from. I have one here from our good friend. He was asking, he's got a GUI with 20 picture controls. He was loading BMP files over the network and it's slow. Is there anything in there that would speed that up?
No, probably not. I think once they're loaded, they may get faster. I know it will do that if they're at a URL that caches them. I don't remember if they're on the local network, if it caches or not.
Okay. All right. We can pick that one up.
Maybe put them on a web server and try it.
Yep. Okay. We get a lot of questions about the mobile. That is a real as far as the presentation, people ask this. We will make the slide deck available. I'll incorporate it and tighten it up and put it out there so you can download it at some point. So we'll probably have all that by the end of the week. So, well, we're actually running out of time here, and the questions continue to come in, Pete. But what I want to do is encourage people to go to the forum, which you see here. I've put it up on the slide. The forum at AccuSoftEnterprises.com or acent.com. Go ahead and register, log in there, and take a look at a lot of the questions. I found that I haven't been in there lately, but when I did go in there, a lot of the questions that came up are in there. We will publish all the attendees that are here. We will publish these questions that have come in. But let's just ask a couple, one more, and then we'll let these people go to lunch if you're on the on the West Coast here. Let's see, we answered that one about the Mac. Oh boy, there's so many good questions. I don't know where to pick. They're looking forward to seeing you at Spectrum.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Where was that? I saw a really good question. Now I can't find it. So what I'm going to do is I will we'll publish these, and between myself and Pete, we'll get these questions answered so we can get them to you. But I would encourage all of you to, if this is a first-time purchase, this is a great time to go ahead and get the product at a discount here. So I would encourage you to do that. So without any further ado, I'd like to end this because we went well over our slotted time, and hopefully we can have another one of these webinars and maybe pick up a particular topic inside AccuTerm and go on that, because the questions are coming in all over the map. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and especially Mr. Pete Schellenbach for taking the time out today to do this. I think we had a lot of good response. A lot of people were here. So we'll look forward to the next webinar, Pete. And if I don't see you before then, I guess I'll see you next month in Arizona. So again,
That's right.
Everybody, thank you for attending, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.